Personal Family Perspective is our last topic of the day, brought to us by Alison Wolf. Alison has served on several committees for the WELS dealing with special needs. She oversaw a community autism support group for 9 years, and she speaks at churches, schools, and workshops, and shares her family's journey with autism spectrum disorder. She and her husband reside in Cedarburg and have 3 adult children, one who is now home with Jesus. Their son's diagnoses include ADHD, anxiety disorder, and both ends of the autism spectrum, mild and severe. Alison is a parent peer specialist with Wisconsin Family Ties, a statewide parent-run organization that works with families who have children with social, emotional, behavioral, substance abuse, and mental health challenges. Please welcome Alison.
I think I just had a pretty good introduction. I also wanted to add that Ian also, who is in heaven now, also had epilepsy. So I left that off the list so that you kind of know the myriad of things that I have some knowledge of. How many of you know someone with autism? Usually most of us do, okay. And how many of you also, do you have a smartphone? Do you have an iPad or some other kind of tablet? All right, because these are probably the 2 main things that I'm going to be discussing about autism and the changes that are happening with technology. Also, I learned today that sometimes when you download a new operating system onto your iPad, it decides to freeze. So, I know, everything possible was going wrong this morning. So, I was going to show you a few apps that I already have on there that I use with some kiddos on the spectrum. But so some background on my family I wanted to share first. I'm going to go back to Josh at the end because I'm going to bring in Josh and technology in a sort of different way. I'm first going to talk more about the iPad and things like that. But Josh will be 28 in December and lives at home with us, and he has anxiety disorder that he is no longer medicated for, Asperger's, which now no longer exists. We are now going to say just the autism spectrum disorder. And I am happy to talk more about autism if you would like, and I can do that and talk about some details. I'll kind of blend it in here and there. So now it's really referred to more as mild autism for Josh. So when the DSM-5 changed in May, the Diagnostic Standard Manual, they went to saying that autism spectrum disorder is just a long spectrum. It's the way I've been referring to it for a long time anyway. And then underneath that also, or with it, is social communication disorder. I still have not met someone who has yet gotten that diagnosis. I'm sure they're starting to give it out. I think there's a lot of confusion as to how we're going to diagnose social pragmatic communication disorder. But that is also under the autism umbrella now. Ian went home to heaven 3 years ago, October 2011. He had a seizure in our backyard swimming pool. He had severe autism. He did talk quite a bit, echoalia. He was mostly echoing what we said. Most people could clearly understand him, so he was very blessed with the ability to converse in a unique sort of way. And he also had OCD. And then Caleb is our oldest, and he is supposedly normal functioning. I don't think any of us really know what that means, but he does have ADHD. It was diagnosed later in life. I think I kind of missed it, and now kind of see that he had it probably since he was very young. He does a good job of self-medicating himself, of knowing what he needs to do and what he can't do. With ADHD and this whole, most kids on the spectrum also have ADHD, so there's obviously some overlap with all 3 of our boys. He is a senior at Wisconsin Lutheran College. So, one of the major things that we find with kids on the spectrum, even adults, is that handwriting is a huge issue. With my current job, I get into schools a lot and help teachers and parents work on IEPs. And if we can go into a classroom and start really watching behaviors, we can see that almost always when something is going to be pen and pencil, that children on the spectrum tend to get agitated. And they can watch a clock and know that's coming up at 1 o'clock, and we might start seeing behaviors at 12:30. So the ability to try, and some people are very reluctant to do this, and I'm not bashing teachers, but to try and get away from handwriting is a big step. So you can imagine right there how technology is such a wonderful thing for kids. And then it's kind of finding what they like. A lot of kids like to type and have that touch of feeling like on a laptop, and they like the clicking. Others like the touching on a touch screen. And another thing that's huge is that with where I've been at with Ian, because he would be 24, is that this technology of trying to get any kind of touch screen on your computer or the software was incredibly expensive. And now you can get an iPad or some type of tablet fairly inexpensively. Apps for your phone or apps for the iPad are usually between 99 cents and $5, some as high as 10. So it's just massively opened this up for so many more people to be able to access really incredible technology at an affordable price. The voice to text also is huge. For kids who it's just overwhelming. They have all the thoughts. Usually children on the spectrum who are more mild are very bright. So the ability to just be able to do voice to text is awesome. Also, across the board, they're visual learners. Well, here we have an animated screen, things happening. When you touch, if it says touch the person who's happy, and you touch the person who's happy, there might be balloons, there might be bubbles, neat noises, which you can turn off if that is a sensory issue for the child. So it's just amazing the ability to learn. Also, kids on the spectrum tend to like to be alone, like to be off. And though we certainly want to get them to be more social, learning is probably most likely going to be most effective if they can do it more on their own. And obviously, things on a computer provide that opportunity. I was, backtracking that. Do you remember books on computers or living books? Ian would do a lot of living books like Mercer Mayer, and so that was a precursor to all of what we're seeing now. But I could flip it on that it would light up each word, and he would lean in and watch that it was lighting up each word. And we had a sense that he knew how to read, but he just wasn't letting us know that, or maybe it just wasn't coming all together. And I think that early watching those animated books and being able to backtrack. He liked clicking on a word over and over again. If it was something like hello, hello, over and over again. So the interaction and things like that are pretty neat. And a little side story, because I think sometimes people are a little scared at how quick technology is changing, but we're just making steps that I was curious if he could read or not. And I thought he could, and so I wrote out Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which he loved, on 3x5 cards, one word per card. And he loved to line things up and put them in order, which is very typical. And I gave them to him, and then I kind of got busy. But I kept singing the song, and I was kind of in the kitchen walking around. And I tell you, he sat on the floor, and he lined up every word in order. And so he did know. And so I think that if you kind of transfer that to technology and reading and looking at words on a computer and how they can light up, how they can do lots of different things, you can begin to see what an incredible thing we've just opened up with the ability God's given us to have this technology in children's hands. So it's pretty amazing. Let's see what other things I have here on that. Then I was going to share a few stories. One, Facebook can also be a nice tool as well. I'll explain that about Josh in a minute. But I know a young man, Dylan, I think that Pastor Behringer knows him too. His mom has created his own Facebook page. She totally watches over and controls it. And a lot of us in the special ministries and WELS post on there for Dylan. And it's a wonderful way for him to interact with others. Some of us will do, he loves elevators, so when people are at different places, they will make videos of being on an elevator and post them on Dylan's page. What a wonderful way for him to not always have to leave the house to interact with others, and that can be overwhelming. So this opens up a whole world, even Skyping. It's not the worst thing in the world that it's not face-to-face and all these things you have to deal with when you're right in front of someone. And I have something that's kind of neat that I found that someone had written. My son is 3 years old, and after months of using my laptop and Android phone to play games, we decided to get him an iPad. Best decision ever. Yes, it was expensive, but well worth the money. And in just 2 weeks, my son is communicating for the first time with tap to talk. He is playing games he never had patience, focus, attention for before, like match games and puzzles. iPad equals miracle in our house. So that's kind of neat, and I find those things over and over that parents will say. And some of this is kind of interesting too. A high percentage of people with autism are motivated by the computer. This motivation is related to the predictability of the computer's response. The user knows exactly what the computer is going to do when a specific action is completed. If you click the X, it makes a picture go away. Unlike interactions with people, the computer will always respond in an expected manner. People are messy and computers are neat, is what one kid with Asperger's said. Kind of neat. The world can be a confusing, unpredictable place with a constant barrage of input for our children who have difficulty filtering out like irrelevant details around them. We kind of do it naturally, like, oh, we don't have to listen to that, I'm going to listen to her. They can't do all that filtering. Many of our children struggle filtering out the sound of fans, the flickering of fluorescent lights, the murmur of people in another room. In order to attend to the relevant information in front of them, mommy's voice asking them to come here, etc. Children will often find something they can control on which to focus their attention and drown out all of the confusing input around them. Many of our children self-stimulate for this purpose. Self-stimulating is a hand flapping or picking at something or making repetitive noises, tearing paper. Having an iPad gives them a sufficiently stimulating alternative that is also socially acceptable, which is interesting. If a kid is sitting playing on his computer, even if he's hunched over, that's going to look much more acceptable to his friends than hand flapping and doing other things like that. So we've created that everyone, wants to be looking at their phone, is doing whatever. So suddenly these kiddos aren't standing out as much, aren't looking as awkward. And then they often can fix them. They know all the lingo, and they become a go-to person. And then the other kids are learning, hey, this is someone I can get to know. They're not just weird or strange. So it's a wonderful thing. I can't say enough about how awesome technology is for many special needs, not to mention autism in particular. I was reading some of the stuff. There's tantrum apps that can teach, what a tantrum is and even the one I was going to show you that I have on mine shows faces of people, all ages, angry, mad, frustrated, and it slowly but surely teaches happy, all that. You get it wrong, it backs up. You get it right, it starts back going forward. It starts with only one face, it goes to 2 faces. You keep doing better, it gets to 3, it gets to 4. It's all touch screen. There's music, bells, and whistles that go with it, but you can easily turn them off. And I'll tell you, for quite a while in church, then there weren't all these devices, but we would allow books and other things. I now see parents bring in the headphones and other things. They're at least getting the child in the building, and maybe it shuts out the rest of the stimuli and they can play their game. So we have one child in our church who brings his iPad every week to church. And the goal the parents have is to slowly wean it, but the whole family can sit in church. So that's kind of great too. There's apps to support literacy development, letter skills, spelling, sight words, for fun and motivation, for communication, articulation and speech therapy, following verbal and visual directions, choice making, that's real huge, where they'll have little videos of kind of right and wrong decisions, or just scenarios, even how to go through a lunch line. And the kids can begin to learn, oh, this is what I'm going to do when I go to junior high or high school, or different everyday things that they might not take in all the verbal information, but they do if it's presented visually. Social skills, that's huge as well. So there's just so much that's available. The website that I really recommend that will talk about a lot of these things and recommend is autismspeaks.org. It is just by far the best website for autism across the board, parents, professionals, educators, anyone. You can get lost in it, there's so much, but it's real clear where you can go and what you can do. They even show videos of infants. I think they can even put them side by side, but I can't remember for sure if they are. But where it's a normal functioning 9-month-old and a 9-month-old that has been tagged with the possibility of autism. And it is fascinating to watch and see the beginning signs, the lack of give and take, the disinterest in what mom is doing. Things like if you're feeding a baby doll, if you are the mom or dad, usually the child will try to imitate that. Children who are starting to show the autism marker are not interested in doing those sorts of things. So fascinating information on Autism Speaks. A lot of research they're doing as well. There's a whole science area you can go in and look at. If you suspect a child or grandchild of having autism, they even have a little checklist you can take. It certainly does not diagnose, but it gives you an idea of, boy, I'm seeing these repetitive behaviors, I'm seeing some of these things. Maybe I should suggest to my friend or my child to take my grandchild to the doctor or something like that. So it's really fascinating. Another buddy I know is Neil. Neil is 24 and he's on Facebook. And I've even helped with his mom to be a little more appropriate with what he says. And he loves gory movies. So, probably I would block him otherwise, but he just loves that he's on Facebook. And it's funny, he doesn't care that he's friends with me and I'm in my 50s. He's just so I'm trying to find some other people who will like Neil as well. And so that's been fun for him. And even when I was talking about the technology, that every one of these things has something to do with technology, even autismspeaks.org, the ability that we can go online and get this information so quickly. And Tony, I sometimes sidewalk with him. I've known Tony for years. That's therapeutic horseback riding. They need volunteers on either side, so I sidewalk. Because usually when I say it to people, they're like, what did she just say? So Tony takes pictures all the time, digital camera. And he downloads them. And what his mother asked for from all her friends for birthday presents is the CD-ROMs that you put the pictures on, because he goes through them like crazy. But the greatest thing is Tony tells me every week, Allison, you're a movie star. I saw you on TV last night, because he took my picture and it's on the CD-ROM and he puts it on his TV. So I'm a movie star. And it's given him especially something to do, because when he's home, he gets bored very easily and just wants to go somewhere else, because kids on the spectrum, people on the spectrum can be very social in the sense of wanting to do things, wanting to go places. So Tony works on all his pictures and videos, and he's putting them to music and all kinds of things. So it's just amazing what you can do. I can pause for a minute if you guys have some questions. And then I was going to tell my Josh story too. Yes?
Do children with autism usually have a seizure disorder also?
Severe autism, yes.
Severe autism.
And I'm trying to think what the other, I usually have something I correlate this with. Doctors will not tell you that there's a link because we haven't found the link. But common sense tells all of us, and I may say, obviously, when you've got that much miswired in your brain, you're probably going to have some seizure activity. But they have not found the actual link why. So what usually occurs is in puberty, is where seizures start occurring. And there's a lot of groups that are trying to help educate parents for what to watch for, because they could be petit mal seizures, they could be stare seizures, they could be having them and the parents aren't aware of it. And the sooner we can get them on meds, as you know, the better it would be. Ian had grand mal, so we knew.
What would you tell a mother who says, I don't want to label my child, and I don't want him to be tested?
Well, go back to diabetes is diabetes, cancer is cancer. I mean, you can't be too in your face right away, but it's such a thing we hide behind today. We should call something what it is. You're going to get the services. Potentially, you're going to be able to get some financial help, depending upon how severe. Especially over 18 in this country, we really help adults with disabilities financially. It's challenging. I would suggest if you know someone else that they could talk to. I've done that quite a bit, but I usually have to know them first. If they could talk to other people, give them like Autism Speaks. See if they might not poke around on that all on their own and come to the conclusion, look at all these neat people. There's videos on there of other moms and dads talking. They start to maybe accept it more when they see that more people, right, other families, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all colors. It's indiscriminate. Yes?
I think we mentioned about not wanting to label. We have what we call people first language. So we no longer say the blind, we say people with blindness or people with visual impairments, say that a person with autism. We're saying he's more than just autistic. There's lots of other things there. So you talk about that too, that, okay, yes, I understand it's not just one thing. This person's not autism. But at the same time, I think everything else that, as far as getting help goes, acknowledging this is a portion of the life. That's why we use this term. So. But people first language is the term that's used now for trying to get away from the label to the person.
I found too that it's more easy for parents to get professionals to listen to them if they can say, I've talked to a doctor, we think my child's in the autism spectrum, could you read this article? Otherwise, it's just the mom saying it, and unfortunately, that's what I do for my job. I work with parents who've got children with special needs, and the professional community doesn't tend to listen very much to parents. They almost need some oomph behind them, and so getting some, maybe not a big label word, but getting some actual on the road to figuring out what's going on from a doctor gives them a little more validity to the parent. I wish it shouldn't be that way, but I find it with school systems, I find it all over. The parents aren't doing something, something's going on in the home, something's causing some of these behaviors. It's a lot of blaming. I'm not talking about it in the Christian world though, so, because now I kind of move in and out both, which is wonderful because I can reach out more. Any others? Was there something over here?
I'm just curious about your tantrum app. How do you use that?
I believe, I've only seen it once, but it shows actually a tantrum, different ways you can deal with a situation. I don't always have to have the remote, and if my brother takes the remote, I don't have to throw a tantrum. This is what a tantrum is. Because and then they show little videos. Some of the things is that these words we use aren't computing with children on the spectrum. Well, what's a tantrum? To them, it might have even been a way of stimming. It felt good to throw themselves down on the floor hard and to scream and yell. And so they don't see that as a bad or negative thing. So it's teaching the social appropriateness. So, one of the interesting things is what we were able to do even with Ian and Josh is that teach them that you can do those things at home, but you can't do them in public. So
that's my question. I take care of kids going through surgery, and it's amazing the number of kids with autism coming in with their iPads.
Yeah.
And they're lifesavers.
Yes.
They really are.
For you.
But for us, for the families and for
Absolutely.
us, it's great. But we do see tantrums. And that's why it's like, oh my gosh, I was just wondering, so I'm going to have to look that up once.
Vocabulary with objects, items, and their sounds allows for single up to 4 tiles of choices.
Okay.
So, and it's just called tantrum apps.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
look at that face.
kind of neat. Anything else at the moment? And I'm trying to make sure I'm going through my list as I go through. So my Josh story, he is our oldest, and you kind of know where some of this is going, I know. But so I've been presenting for years, and I can tend to sound a little negative about the fact that I love Josh. He has mild autism. Both our boys, Josh went to Our Savior Lutheran School in Grafton. He went to Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School. And he is on his, 3 colleges, but one he's now at the second time. And he is going to graduate on December 14th with an English major after trying 3 different majors. He has never lived on his own. He has never lived out of the house. He's never moved. He's never had an apartment. He loves us dearly. He loves being with us. And I seriously, my husband and I thought, we are going to die, and he's just going to stay in this house. And I really wasn't sure how he'd end up paying bills or anything else. He's a wonderful young man, incredibly intelligent. He will talk your ear off. He can move from topic to topic. He just takes in information. Straight A student now that he's older and can, focus better on schooling, and now really accepts that he needs to be on a stimulant. And that really helps him. So he's gone through a lot of perseverations over the years, from dinosaurs to when he was 9 years old, he had convinced himself that during the day he was a squirrel. And it's just incredible imagination. And he would end up in trees in our backyard so high, I was just very scared. And he would forage food in cans and put them in areas, some really bizarre behaviors in the past that he did move through. And we never saw that again after about that summer of doing it. So we've been through a lot of things wondering sometimes, oh, are we ever going to get out of this? He was very anxious when he was younger, which is interesting. See, when he was in the mode of the squirrel, he wasn't even thinking that he was a person, so some of the anxiety went away, because he never even normally would have climbed a tree. Josh was also born with one hand, so trying to go up a tree too, I was always like, saving yogurt containers and needing to save them. A lot of strong OCD behaviors lined up in his room. I kept thinking he would have one yogurt every day, because one yogurt is one yogurt every day, you have to have one. And I kept just thinking, what are we gonna do? You know, this is gonna, but finally we moved on from that. I'm just trying to give you some background information. Not always went to school. We had a lot of support. We did social skills training right at our Savior School. We did a lot to set up Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School, being successful quite a bit, and actively working with the teachers. I've been blessed to be able to, my kids have been my full-time responsibility, and it did end up a job because of their challenges. So Josh started getting, in high school, I guess I'm still on that end, like many of you, that we're blessed that we didn't have to worry about a lot of the technology things when our kids were younger. So there weren't smartphones yet. So I was relieved of, because he probably would have demanded one, not that we necessarily would have given in, but it would have controlled our lives. But what controlled our lives is PlayStation 3. Begged, borrowed, screamed, yelled, tantrumed, you name it. And so finally we have a contract, and we made a contract for the PS3. And it went pretty good for a while. I mean, he understood, you get to play if the homework's done. And this is now sophomore in high school, so we had put this off. And he became obsessed with World of Warcraft. And it is, I mean, I could talk to parents about that. I was ready to give in. He could play it 24 hours, I didn't care. It was so horrendous on our family life. I just wanted him away, the screaming, the yelling, and now you're talking about a tall high school young man. And so I kept writing things out, do you realize that you are pulling away from people? Little things. If you say a lot at once, it's just blah, 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 like peanuts. So we started like taping things on his door, sliding things when he was playing. He'd scream and yell and rip them up, but we just kept at it and at it. I'd find articles about this is very unhealthy. Don't you want to ever someday, have friends, because it was controlling everything. And so he moved away from it and then became obsessed with, of all things, talk radio, Chicago talk radio. And my husband even bought him an internet radio because it was hard to get reception in the basement. And so he would listen to 670 The Score. He would call in and talk to them. But they're very crass on the show, and Josh started getting a little more crass and swearing a little bit more. But all he talked about was Chicago sports. And one of my jokes when I present is that my father wrote for everyone in my family was born in Chicago except me. And so, sorry if you like Chicago. And Josh was very close to my father, and my father died when he was 9, and my dad wrote for Door County newspaper, and he'd write about Chicago sports, especially the Bears and the Cubs. So we have pictures of Josh, they're about 5 or 6 in Packer gear, and nothing after that. And my husband says that this is worse than drugs. As having a son who's a Bears fan, but we've adapted. So he would listen constantly. We couldn't get him off. So I mean, that was like 3 hours a day. Then he got in another program, and it was just like, oh my gosh. But finally that started to subside. And from that, he started with Facebook. And you can have groups. I don't know if you belong to some groups. IDD has a group. And you can be in different groups. And he joined some sports groups on Facebook. And literally started to get a few very good friends. And one of them we met, Caleb played football through junior year, and we were going down to one of the schools in Illinois, and his buddy, I can't believe I can't remember his name because Lawrence was going to meet us there. Now seriously, I knew Lawrence existed, but I was worried. Steve was too, and we're thinking he's going to cancel. Lawrence was at that time 42 years old. We met him a couple years ago, and that kind of worried me too. Married, anyway. So when we're sitting up in the stands, and Josh got a text saying he's here. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and I turned to Steve. I said, so is our son ever going to come back? Is this guy an axe murderer or whatever? Lawrence comes back. Lawrence is part of our family. We adore him. He's visited up here. We visited down there. He and Josh are excellent friends. Lawrence has 5 older brothers. So Josh is like his little brother, African American, and Josh is the oldest, so Lawrence is his big brother. Incredible relationship. This opened the door to other friends Lawrence has who are younger. And so he met a man who was dating a woman, and they all, got along great and were talking, and I think she'd play along with liking Chicago sports. And she was working with children on the autism spectrum. And Josh Wood finally started sharing, when he was probably around 22, he started opening up more and sharing about his autism. So she started calling him off and on, and this is a good year and a half ago, about ideas of what to do with the kids. And I was amazed listening to him pacing in the living room as he talks. He has to pace while he talks. He would probably, if he was doing this, he'd probably talk, and he'd be amazing. And then he'd turn his back quite a bit on you, because that helps him get his thought process. So I make your job harder, don't I, by moving, I realize. Sorry. It's hard not to move. And so it started growing into more of a relationship. And on December 22nd last year, he went down to Chicago to stay with Lawrence and meet up with some of these other guys they've met. Incredible people, great friends. One's from Arizona, one's from New Jersey, 2 are from Chicago. Amazing people. The others are more closer to Josh's age, one is a little younger. And he meets Octavia. And she just falls head over heels in love with my son. And it took about a month, and she dropped the other guy. And not that Josh is not amazing, but they are engaged, and he is moving to Virginia. I know. On December 14th, we're driving him out there. They found the apartment together. He's made some trips out there. It's been the whirlwind fast thing of and he calls us, Mom, okay, now the contract says this. And he's never rented an apartment, so I'm trying to help him through all this. She's 25, he'll be 28, like I had said, and she is wonderful. And she totally understands his disability, and she sees it as well. I've got some issues and problems of my own too. And we'll just work through this together. We FaceTime with her. She eats dinner with us, because there's a computer. There's technology, and there's Tavia. It's so funny because Steve's he says, I feel like I can't fart or burp in my own home, because you never know. Josh will just be walking around the computer, and here he comes, and there's Tavia. So we've only met her twice, and she's coming for Thanksgiving, but we feel like we've known her forever. And that is my incredible, so when Sue called me, I'm like, oh, I've got a technology story. all technology stories. So they're very practical, and she really understands how he doesn't as much as he would go on and talk and kind of come across as he knows more than you on some subjects, so he's really worked hard on that. He doesn't like being the center of attention. So he's been arguing nonstop is that I am going to have an engagement party for him. I get to have some fun. And he literally threw his own kind of temper tantrum for about a week. He just kept bringing it up. I don't know why I have to do this. This is just ridiculous. And it's out of the blue, and I'm working, I'm doing things, I'll be on the phone, I don't know why I have to have an engagement party. And finally he's dropped it and realized we're gonna have it. And that's kind of what we've learned too, is I have to let him process this life, which is really harder for him than most of us, and let him get things out, and let him pace, and let him grumble, and then we move on. So they've decided to just get married January 2nd, and I think they call it celebrants now, they don't say justice of the peace. And they're going to save us a lot of money. Because she knows that will be easier for him. And their friends too, as I described, are all across the country and really don't have the money to be flying somewhere and buying the suits and the clothes and all that. So I know God's in control and we're not. But when I presented in the past, I've said this, people say, well, you sound so negative. I'm not being negative. He's just going to be with us the rest of his life. It's just a fact. So now he's not. So we're going to have a very quiet, empty house when he moves out. But it's an amazing story. And she's a wonderful Christian woman. She's African American. And I really think it's going to be a great relationship. I think they'll be very committed to one another. So I know, pretty amazing. So, boy, I get to talk and share my story. That's kind of fun. Do you have questions?
I just want to say that Bible passage that God do more than we ask or imagine. It comes, when you're praying about your son's future, who would have ever dreamed what this future would be?
And he will share that too. I mean, because we've had, I'm never going to get married, I'm never going to meet someone. He's never liked to drink, and we've always been thankful because I think he would have been drawn to the bars otherwise. And he's gullible. So to meet like this and get to know someone and talk about children and issues and the future and politics, it got through all of that. So it is.
Makes you almost more sympathetic to the bears.
A little teeny tiny, not much. Yeah. So.
So what do you do now? Did I miss that, or?
Oh, yes, thank you, and I appreciate you asking, because I'd be happy to come talk about specifically children's mental health sometime. But I work for Wisconsin Family Ties, and it's a very small not-for-profit based out of Madison. And we work with children with social, emotional, behavioral, substance use issues, and mental health. We like to say challenges. They're not disorders. It's kind of some of that softening of the language Pastor was talking about. And they are challenges. We find that we like to use those frames of words because in a school, oftentimes they haven't gotten the diagnosis, or maybe their IEP is just under EBD, which is real broad. And usually people are complaining about children's behaviors. So that's why we like to really make that kind of all-encompassing. But it's children who struggle with mental health. A lot of parents with children with autism, because there's that anxiety, so it really becomes a mental health challenge as well. So I am a parent peer specialist. They're trying to get away from the word advocate because it's so overused and sometimes kind of negative connotations in our schools. But there's 13 of us across the state of Wisconsin, and I specifically work in Ozaukee and Washington, but now I'm overseeing all of southeastern Wisconsin, and we hope to grow, and I would train the other people that would be in other counties. We're a county-driven healthcare state, I'm sure most of you know that, and so we follow that model. And so everyone who works for us have children with special needs or with mental health challenges, so we're a parent-run organization. And it's really amazing. I had someone else tell me about applying for the job, and I've been with them for 2.5 years, and we plan the Children Come First conference every year, and it's one of the only children's mental health conferences in the whole country, let alone in the state of Wisconsin. It's coming up November 10th and 11th, and I'm a co-coordinator of that. We have 376 people coming.
Oh, wow.
So we're real excited, and we're focusing on fostering resilience. It's not Christian-based, but really wonderful stuff. You know, even we're having a neurologist and a neuropsych coming together to help answer questions for parents, what's the difference between the two? A whole range of things for social workers, healthcare professionals, parents, sort of you name it. So we help sponsor that. And I just want to share with you, because it's really amazing, and sometimes these things don't make the news, but I think we're the only state, and I think we are the first, to have an Office of Children's Mental Health. And that was Governor Walker, and my executive director had been trying to get Doyle to pass this for years, and he was totally uninterested in working with children's mental health. And it's Tanette Walker who has been so interested. I'm not sure what connection there is in their family that she's so supportive of this. So we actually have a director of the Office of Children's Mental Health in Madison, and they're working to try and get all these agencies that are state and federally funded, I know, I'm glad you're sitting down, to actually come together and work together and stop overlapping services. It's a huge undertaking, and it's Elizabeth Hudson, but I think she's up to the task. She gets people to talk. She gets people to come to the table, because parents right now, I'm sure there's like, you'll look up something and there's 30 places to call and they have no clue where to start. And I take a lot of those 800 calls, and it's cute because I'll call back. It's an intake line, but I get to retrieve the calls. And they'll say, who are you and where are you from? And I'll chuckle and I say, have you been on the phone all day? And they'll say, yes, we're just going down the list trying to find help for our children. So there's just sometimes too much information out there and it's too overwhelming. So that's, if we can try and get some of these agencies to know about each other and work together, that'd be great. So, little plug. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah. Yes?
My nephew was diagnosed just a couple of years ago in his mid-20s. How common is it that these kids are adults by the time they figure it out?
With autism spectrum disorder? Less common today than before. Was he showing like ADHD? Were they talking about things like
Yeah,
that?
there was some of that too, yeah. He's very antisocial. I mean, when my sister has company, he's hardly ever seen. He goes and hides in his room.
Yeah. I don't think it's incredibly uncommon, it's just getting less uncommon. But there's a lot of neat books out that, and I'm not going to think of the one author I'm thinking of, that he might be interested in reading, where people who, it's a young man, and he was diagnosed later in life, and he talks about what it's like, kind of firsthand experience. Sometimes when Josh, he's only read a few things like that, but it was like, wow, I do have those tendencies, I do have some of those behaviors. I did want to describe too, Josh, we didn't start helping directly until 9, but we were doing the intensive in-home therapy with Ian. We did social skills training with Josh. I joke, a revolving door in our house, of therapists coming in and out and people working with our kids. And so, and Ian had really made it quite far. It's just that epilepsy is just so horrendous, and the drugs you have to take to control the seizures. But it takes a lot of work to get the kids to come far. It really does. But there's even social skills training things online now, and things you can do to help. So I think too, it's kind of like mental health challenges or disorders, is that there's such a stigma, and he probably presented himself as rather strange or odd, and people tend to back away and not want to deal with it, and that might be too why he didn't get diagnosed. And it's really unfortunate that our society is so worried and scared about odd behaviors instead of trying to help or embrace these people.
Is there a higher risk of suicide then among young people like that who don't get diagnosed because of that?
Even if they do get diagnosed.
That they would just feel so out of place that they don't know what to do?
Mild autism, Asperger's, there's a high rate of suicide, yes.
That's so sad.
It is. Yeah, they just feel so awkward, and and people do tend to laugh or turn away.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had 2 children on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
Is that common? Is that?
It's more, I'm just gonna make sure I have my stats open. It's more common than you think. We've had the whole family blood drawn. We definitely can see back if we look at Steve's side of the family and my side of the family. Of course, I'm not on the spectrum, but I don't think I am. We see a lot of things that probably weren't diagnosed. Steve's parents both have a lot of obsessive compulsive tendencies. They could never have gotten diagnosed with it. Steve always wants handles on pots, always in, and nothing's in the pot. It's not on, the stove isn't on. Cabinet doors have to be closed. And if I tell him, can you leave it open, he can. So that's not diagnosable. But he struggles with that. On my side of the family, a lot of alcoholism, which is related to depression, which is related to autism. So there's definitely a genetic component. The majority of the research has been coming down for years. It's just that finally I think it's getting out there more, is that the overall thing is it's a genetic marker. But there is a lot of research to that. Why didn't the marker come out in our youngest son, Caleb? And they're looking at a lot of different things. And my concern, but as a Christian I can keep praying about it, is it is, Bruno Bettelheim in the 60s used to say it was the refrigerator mom, it's all her fault. I think we're going to start to return to that with some real evidence that a lot of this is happening in utero with early brain development. The folic acid before, during, and after. We know when we're pregnant much younger, so much sooner, so that's good. They're looking at age of parent, just like almost any other health risk. They're seeing premature birth. They're even looking at having the flu in your 3rd trimester. I think that's where there'll be future counseling. You didn't go out and purposely get the flu and then have a child with autism. I think it's going to be challenging in the future, moving forward, as people are going to be, what did I do? And that would be challenged. We cannot earmark anything in particular in any of my pregnancies. So, and why, Josh has 1 hand, so it's kind of interesting. And we have nothing like that in the family. My mom was adopted, she's never found out, so we kind of stop a little bit there with getting any knowledge. But Caleb has that anxiety and the ADHD. The anxiety's really gone away. It would never have been able to be something that he would have been medicated for, but I would take him to Concordia University for a basketball clinic, and he wanted to go so bad, and then it took me at least 25 minutes to get him out of the car, so we'd go early. And he could, I know you're gonna be, and I'd stay out in the parking lot. He grew out of it. But so there was something going on there for quite a while too. So it is real interesting. But environmental things they're looking at as well, that the environmental triggers too could very well be playing a part in it.
Well, they talked about the vaccines, some people will not get their children vaccinated because they think it'll cause autism.
And all the latest research in the last 3 years is totally negating that. But parents will hear what they want to hear because they're trying to cure their child. And there is no cure. We have found it's like 15 gene mutations. And they're finding those mutations bring out different things. It might be more of a communication disorder with this child with autism. It might be more sensory issues with this child. But it's not going to be one gene. I think God's going to keep this one a little bit of a secret for us, and we might never know. Yes?
We have a grandson who's very dear to us. 26 weeks he was born, and he's showing signs. And Mom just doesn't want to have him tested or deal with it in any way. And he tells us he loves his iPad at home. Well, we don't have one. And he tells us, Nana, you and Papa have to get mine. So I guess we're going to have to get an
I think
iPad.
you might have to get an iPad.
Yeah.
Start getting some fun apps.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
dear.
oh, that's challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least the younger and younger they can diagnose, the better. I know I had a friend who called me recently, and she did the rating scale on Autism Speaks, and it was with her grandchild, and then one of her other daughters took it because she sees it in her nephew, and then her husband took it, and they all rated like 8s and 9s out of 10. And she and her husband did not speak to them for 6 weeks, but now they are.
And that's the
And
hard thing.
I know.
If I push her, she just
I know.
won't hear me.
And she, calls me back crying, I never should have. I said, well, you can't go back now. And I knew she just needed to get it out. And now they're going to look at going to I was going to remember the name of this. It's a pediatrician who can work specifically with where your child should be at. I'm not going to think of the name right now, but it's a little bit more of a specialist. So they should know exactly what they should be doing at that age within a range. So it's a step.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.